The slap echoed through first class. Isabelle's cheek burned as she clutched her pregnant belly. The flight attendant smirked, unaware of the man photographing everything from row 2. Nobody knew that Isabelle's husband owned the entire Stellar Air Airlines, and today would change everything. Before we dive into this shocking story, where are you watching from today? Hit that like button and subscribe if you've ever witnessed unfair treatment on a flight. The next few minutes will show you how one powerful moment of injustice led to an airline's complete transformation. Isabelle Morgan smoothed her Navy maternity dress as she settled into seat 3A in first class. At 32, she had become one of Chicago's most accomplished corporate lawyers, known for breaking barriers at her prestigious firm. Her 7-month pregnant belly pressed against the seatbelt as she tried to get comfortable for the flight from Atlanta to Chicago. This would be her last business trip before maternity leave, a crucial meeting to close a multi-million-dollar deal that couldn't be rescheduled. Her husband, Nathaniel Morgan, had insisted on upgrading her ticket to first class. "My 2 most precious treasures deserve nothing less," he'd said while kissing her goodbye that morning. At 38, Nathaniel had transformed from a quiet tech genius working out of their garage to one of America's most innovative business minds. His software company had revolutionized airline logistics systems, making him a fortune that most people couldn't fathom. But unlike many wealthy entrepreneurs, Nathaniel preferred staying out of the spotlight, focusing instead on his next big moves. What almost no one knew, not even Stellar Air's own employees, was that Nathaniel had recently acquired the struggling airline through a complex series of holding companies. As America's third-largest carrier, Stellar Air had a solid route network, but a reputation for inconsistent service and a troubling internal culture. The acquisition had been finalized just yesterday, with Nathaniel signing the last documents in New York, while Isabelle prepared for her Chicago trip. "I want to see how they really operate before anyone knows I'm watching," Nathaniel had explained. "Once they know the boss is looking, everything changes. I need to see the truth first." Isabelle had laughed. "Your secret shopper approach, but with an entire airline." Their excitement about becoming parents had only amplified their bond. After 5 years of marriage and 2 heartbreaking miscarriages, this pregnancy had progressed beautifully. Their baby boy was healthy and active, kicking so strongly sometimes that Isabelle joked he might be a future soccer star. Now, as other passengers boarded around her, Isabelle noticed the subtle changes in their expressions when they saw her. A well-dressed black woman in first class still raised eyebrows even in 2025. She was used to it, the quick double takes, the assumptions that she must be in the wrong place. "Ticket, please," said the gate agent for the 3rd time during boarding, despite having already scanned her boarding pass twice. "Still seat 3A, Isabelle replied, with practiced patience, showing her ticket again. Penelope Vance had been with Stellar Air Airlines for 20 years, working her way up to senior flight attendant on their premium routes. With her perfectly coiffed blonde hair, immaculate uniform, and practiced smile, she embodied what the airline considered its premium service image. Passengers like Walter Jennings, the middle-aged white executive seated across from Isabelle in 3B, knew Penelope by name and received her undivided attention. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jennings," Penelope purred as she offered him a pre-flight champagne. "So wonderful to have you flying with us again. How was your golf tournament in Scottsdale?" "Shot under 80 for the first time," Walter replied with a self-satisfied smile. "Must have been that tip you gave me about the resort's pro shop." "I knew you'd love it there." Penelope beamed, completely ignoring Isabelle's presence. When Penelope finally turned toward Isabelle, her smile disappeared, replaced by a cool, professional mask. No warmth, no welcome, just obligation. "Something to drink before takeoff?" she asked, not making eye contact. "Water, please," Isabelle replied. "I need to take my prenatal vitamins." Penelope nodded curtly and moved on without responding, never returning with the water, when Isabelle pressed her call button 10 minutes later. Penelope walked past, twice attending to other passengers in the small first-class cabin. Meanwhile, Walter's empty champagne flute was replaced within moments of him finishing it. After 15 minutes, Isabelle pressed the button again. Penelope finally approached with an exasperated sigh. "Yes," she asked, finger already moving to switch off the call light. "I still haven't received my water," Isabelle explained. "I need to take medication." "We're preparing for takeoff. You'll have to wait until we're in the air," Penelope replied, dismissively, despite the fact that Walter was sipping his second champagne across the aisle. As the plane taxied toward the runway, Isabelle felt a familiar tightness in her abdomen. Probably just Braxton Hicks contractions, she thought. The practice contractions her doctor had told her to expect. Still, she couldn't help feeling increasingly anxious as the plane took off, her throat dry, her prenatal vitamins still in her purse, and Penelope studiously avoiding eye contact whenever she passed by. 30 minutes into the flight, the discomfort Isabelle had been feeling intensified. What had started as mild tightening was now coming in distinct waves, each one slightly more uncomfortable than the last. She shifted in her seat, trying to find a position that offered relief, but the cramped space, even in first class, made it difficult. Isabelle pressed her call button again. Penelope, who had been chatting amicably with Walter about his company's expansion plans, glanced at the illuminated button and frowned slightly before continuing her conversation for another full minute. When she finally made her way to Isabelle's seat, her expression was one of barely concealed annoyance. "I really need some water, and possibly some Tylenol," Isabelle explained, keeping her voice low to avoid drawing attention. "I'm experiencing some discomfort." "We'll be starting our beverage service shortly," Penelope replied flatly. "You can wait until then." "I'm 7 months pregnant and having contractions," Isabelle said more firmly. "I need water now, please." Penelope's eyes narrowed. "Everyone has to follow the same procedures. You'll be served when it's time for the service." 3 rows behind them, Leo Kramer observed the interaction with growing concern. As a photojournalist who had spent the past year documenting instances of everyday discrimination for a major digital publication, he recognized the dynamics at play immediately. The dismissive tone, the different standard of service, the underlying message that some passengers deserved immediate attention while others could wait regardless of need. He discreetly reached for his camera. Another contraction gripped Isabelle stronger than before. She took a deep breath, counting the seconds until it passed. 5 minutes since the last one. That was too close together, especially at her stage of pregnancy. The anxiety she'd been managing escalated into genuine concern for her baby. When Penelope disappeared into the galley again, Isabelle tried to catch the eye of another flight attendant passing through a younger woman named Chloe, who had smiled at her earlier. But Chloe was busy in economy class, and the seatbelt sign remained illuminated due to mild turbulence. After 20 more minutes, with no response to her repeatedly pressed call button, Isabelle made a decision. Her baby's well-being was more important than airline protocols. She carefully unbuckled her seatbelt and stood steadying herself against the seat as another contraction began. Penelope emerged from the galley instantly, as if she had been watching for exactly this moment. "Ma'am, the seatbelt sign is on," she announced loudly enough for the entire first-class cabin to hear. "You need to return to your seat immediately." "I need medical attention," Isabelle replied, one hand on her belly. "I've been trying to get assistance for almost an hour." Penelope stepped closer, invading Isabelle's personal space. "You people never want to follow the rules, do you? Sit down now, or I'll have to report this as an incident." The cabin went silent. Even Walter Jennings looked up from his laptop, startled by the confrontation unfolding in the small first-class section. "Excuse me," Isabelle said, her lawyer's composure still intact despite the pain and indignity. "I am having contractions and need water and pain relievers. This is a medical situation." "Oh, please," Penelope scoffed. "You're being dramatic. We deal with passengers like you all the time trying to get special treatment." "Passengers like me?" Isabelle repeated, her voice steady despite the implication. "You mean pregnant women with medical concerns? You know exactly what I mean," Penelope said, stepping even closer. "Now sit down and stop disrupting this flight with your theatrics." Isabelle stood her ground. "I will sit down when you bring me water and pain relievers, and after I use the bathroom, which is my right as a passenger." What happened next occurred so quickly that some passengers would later disagree about the exact sequence. Penelope's hand moved in a swift arc, connecting with Isabelle's cheek with a sharp crack that seemed to echo through the cabin. The slap was hard enough to leave an instant red mark on Isabelle's face. Isabelle's hand flew to her cheek, her eyes wide with shock. Several passengers gasped. Leo Kramer's camera captured the exact moment Penelope's face twisted with contempt. Isabelle's expression of disbelief, the red handprint already forming on her dark skin. "How dare you touch me?" Isabelle whispered, her lawyer's mind already cataloging the assault, even as her hand protectively covered her belly. Penelope stepped back, suddenly aware that she had crossed a line from which there was no return. But rather than apologize, she doubled down. "You threatened me," she said loudly. "Everyone saw it. You got out of your seat, approached me aggressively." "That's not what happened," Leo called out from his seat, his camera still recording. "You slapped a pregnant woman who asked for water." The captain's voice came over the intercom before Penelope could respond. "This is your captain speaking. Due to a situation in the cabin, we'll be making an unscheduled landing in Pittsburgh. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened. Flight attendants prepare the cabin for arrival." As Penelope moved to secure the cabin, shooting venomous glares at both Isabelle and Leo, Isabelle slowly lowered herself back into her seat. Her cheeks stung, her contractions continued, and tears of humiliation threatened to fall. But she wouldn't give Penelope the satisfaction of seeing her cry. Instead, she thought of Nathaniel, wishing he were there, wondering how she would explain why she was landing in Pittsburgh instead of Chicago. She had no way of knowing that in a few hours, Stellar Air Airlines would regret ever having hired Penelope Vance. The plane touched down at Pittsburgh International Airport, with a jolt, the hasty landing evident in the captain's handling. Police vehicles with flashing lights were already waiting on the tarmac when they taxied to a remote stand away from the main terminal. What should have been a routine flight had turned into a security incident, with Isabelle Morgan cast as the instigator rather than the victim. Have you ever witnessed someone being blamed for a situation they didn't create? Type 1 in the comments if you've seen justice delayed because people in authority believe the wrong person. Hit that like button if you think airlines need to do better with how they treat all passengers equally. Are you ready to see how this situation spirals further before justice arrives? Let's continue. Through the windows, Isabelle could see airport security and police officers approaching the aircraft. Her heart raced as she realized the narrative was already being controlled by Penelope, who had disappeared into the cockpit immediately after landing, presumably to give her version of events to the authorities. Within minutes, the cabin door opened and 3 officers boarded the plane. They conferred briefly with the captain before Penelope emerged from the cockpit, her face a mask of professional concern that couldn't completely hide her smug satisfaction. "That's her," Penelope said, pointing directly at Isabelle. "She became combative when asked to follow standard safety procedures. She threatened me and created a disturbance that endangered the flight." Officer Jenkins, a stocky man with a military-style haircut and impassive expression, approached Isabelle's seat while his colleagues positioned themselves in the aisle as if preparing for resistance. "Ma'am, we need you to come with us," Jenkins stated flatly. "Officer, I'm 7 months pregnant and was denied water and medical assistance. Isabelle explained calmly, her legal training kicking in. "The flight attendant slapped me when I stood to use the restroom. Multiple passengers witnessed this." Jenkins glanced around the cabin. "Did anyone see what happened here?" The silence that followed was deafening. Passengers suddenly became intensely interested in their phones, magazines, or the views out the windows. Even Walter Jennings, who had had a clear view of the entire incident, pretended to be engrossed in his laptop. "I saw everything," Leo Kramer finally said, standing from his seat. "I have photographs of the flight attendant striking this woman. She's the victim here, not the aggressor." Officer Jenkins barely acknowledged Leo. "Sir, please remain seated. We'll take statements later." Turning back to Isabelle, he continued, "Ma'am, please gather your belongings and come with us. We need to ask you some questions." "Am I being detained?" Isabelle asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "We're just going to sort this out at the terminal," Jenkins replied evasively. "Please cooperate." With no real choice, Isabelle collected her purse and carry-on, wincing as another contraction tightened across her abdomen. Penelope watched from the galley arms, crossed a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "Officer," Leo tried again, holding up his camera, "I have evidence that, sir, interfering with an investigation is a federal offense," one of the other officers cut in. "Please remain seated until all passengers are cleared to deplane." As Isabelle was escorted down the aisle, she could feel the eyes of every passenger on her. Some looked away in shame, others in discomfort, a few with undisguised curiosity about the pregnant black woman being removed from first class. The humiliation burned almost as much as her cheek still did from Penelope's slap. In the jetway, more security personnel waited. Isabelle was not permitted to enter the main terminal through the regular gate. Instead, she was directed down a service stairwell to the tarmac, where a security vehicle waited. The officers flanked her as if she might attempt to flee, despite her obvious pregnancy and the absurdity of where she might run to on an active airfield. "My phone," Isabelle said, reaching for her purse. "I need to call my husband." "You can make calls after questioning," Jenkins replied, gently but firmly taking her purse and handing it to another officer. "Standard procedure." The security vehicle transported her to a side entrance of the terminal away from the public areas. Isabelle was led through service corridors to a small windowless room with a table, 4 chairs, and nothing else. The institutional beige walls and fluorescent lighting created an atmosphere more appropriate for criminal interrogation than for addressing a customer service issue. "Please wait here," Jenkins said as he left the room. The door closed behind him with a distinct click that suggested it had been locked. Alone in the room, Isabelle finally allowed herself a moment of vulnerability. Tears welled in her eyes as she gently rubbed her belly, feeling her baby move within her. Another contraction came, still not regular enough to indicate true labor, but concerning nonetheless, given the stress she was under. "It's okay, little one," she whispered. "Daddy will figure out what's happening. He always does." What Isabelle didn't know was that her purse with her phone inside had been placed in a plastic bin outside the room. The phone was already lighting up with multiple missed calls from Nathaniel, who had just received an automated alert that his wife's flight had been diverted to Pittsburgh. 20 minutes passed before the door opened again. Officer Jenkins returned, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit who introduced himself as Howard Crane, Vice President of Customer Relations for Stellar Air Airlines. "Mrs. Morgan," Howard began, his voice professionally sympathetic, but with an undertone of condescension. "We take incidents of passenger non-compliance very seriously at Stellar Air. Our flight attendants are trained to prioritize safety above all else." "Non-compliance," Isabelle repeated incredulously. "Your flight attendant denied me water and medical attention, then physically assaulted me when I tried to use the restroom. I'm 7 months pregnant and having contractions, which I repeatedly informed her about." Howard smiled thinly. According to our senior flight attendant, you became verbally abusive when asked to remain seated during the seatbelt sign, then physically threatening, causing her to defend herself. That's absolutely false, Isabelle replied. Her lawyer's mind now fully engaged, despite her physical discomfort. There were multiple witnesses. One passenger has photographic evidence. Yes, well, we'll certainly review all perspectives, Howard said dismissively. In the meantime, Stellar Air will be pressing charges for interference with a flight crew, which is a federal offense. I'm here as a courtesy to inform you of this before formal charges are filed. Isabelle stared at him in disbelief. I want my phone. I'm calling my attorney. That won't be possible just yet, Jenkins interjected. We have a few more questions, and Ms. Vance needs to provide her formal statement. As if on cue, the door opened again, and Penelope walked in, now the picture of a traumatized employee. She had removed her makeup to make her face appear paler, and had somehow produced tears that left tracks down her cheeks. I don't feel comfortable being in the same room as her, Penelope said tremulously to Howard. After what she did. You slapped me across the face, Isabelle stated firmly. That's assault and battery, Ms. Vance, and there are photographs. Penelope's eyes narrowed momentarily before she composed herself back into the victim role. She's still being aggressive. Do you see what I had to deal with? I felt threatened. When these people get angry, you never know what they might do. These people, Isabelle repeated, catching the obvious racial undertone that Howard and Jenkins seemed determined to ignore. A sharp pain cut through Isabelle's abdomen, more intense than the previous contractions. She gasped, doubling over slightly. I need medical attention, she said through gritted teeth. Now more theatrics, Penelope muttered, just loud enough to be heard. The door opened once more, and a female officer entered. Officer Maria Rodriguez looked from Penelope to Isabelle, her experienced eyes taking in the situation quickly. What's going on here? She asked, noting Isabelle's obvious discomfort. Routine questioning about an in-flight incident, Jenkins replied. Rodriguez moved closer to Isabelle. Ma'am, are you in pain? I'm having contractions, Isabelle explained. I've been asking for medical assistance since I was on the plane. Rodriguez turned to Jenkins and Howard. She needs to be checked by a medic now. We're in the middle of, Howard began. She's a pregnant woman in distress. Rodriguez cut him off. Medical needs come first. I'm calling the paramedics. As Rodriguez reached for her radio, Isabelle noticed the distinctive ring on Penelope's right hand, a silver band with the Stellar Air logo inlaid with small sapphires. She recognized it from a company magazine she'd read while researching Stellar Air before Nathaniel's acquisition. It was the 20-year service award given only to the airline's most senior employees. The realization that this woman who had treated her with such contempt and had now physically assaulted her was considered one of Stellar Air's exemplary representatives made Isabelle's blood boil. If this was how their most experienced staff behaved, the culture problems ran even deeper than Nathaniel had suspected. Another contraction gripped her stronger than before as Rodriguez called for medical assistance. Through the pain, one thought sustained Isabelle. Nathaniel would have realized something was wrong by now. And when Nathaniel Morgan set his mind to something, nothing in the world could stand in his way. In a sleek conference room 58 floors above Manhattan, Nathaniel Morgan set down his pen after signing the final document that officially made him the majority owner of Stellar Air Airlines. Across the table, his legal team and the airline's previous ownership group exchanged handshakes and congratulations, unaware that the quiet, unassuming man who had just acquired a multi-billion-dollar company was already focused elsewhere. Is that everything? Nathaniel asked his lead attorney, glancing at his watch. Yes, Mr. Morgan. As of this moment, you own 73% of Stellar Air Airlines through your holding companies. The SEC filings will be completed by end of business today, and the public announcement is scheduled for next Monday, as you requested." Nathaniel nodded, already pulling out his phone to check on Isabelle's flight. Their daily routine included tracking each other's locations when traveling, not out of distrust, but as a way to feel connected when apart. His brow furrowed when he saw the flight status, diverted Pittsburgh. "Ryan," he called to his assistant, who was organizing documents at the side table. "Check what's happening with Stellar Air Flight 1772 from Atlanta. It's been diverted to Pittsburgh." Ryan Cho, who had been Nathaniel's right hand for 5 years, immediately pulled out his tablet. Efficient and loyal Ryan had helped Nathaniel build his software company from a promising startup to an industry leader. He was one of the few people who knew about the Stellar Air acquisition before it happened. "On it," Ryan replied, already making calls. "Isn't that Isabelle's flight? Yes?" Nathaniel confirmed, trying Isabelle's cell phone. The call went straight to voicemail. He tried again with the same result. An uncomfortable feeling settled in his stomach as he sent a text that remained undelivered. "Something's wrong," he said, more to himself than to Ryan. "She always answers, or at least texts back." Ryan returned, concern evident on his face. "The airline's operations center says there was a passenger disturbance that required an unscheduled landing. They wouldn't provide any details about specific passengers." "Call them back," Nathaniel directed, his voice taking on an edge that rarely surfaced. "Tell them who I am if necessary." "I tried that approach," Ryan replied. "The representative said, and I quote, 'Ownership changes don't affect our security protocols, sir. They don't believe you're the owner because the public announcement hasn't been made.'" Nathaniel's jaw tightened. He dialed another number on his phone. "Mark, it's Nathaniel Morgan. I need a favor. My wife was on Stellar Air 1372, which just made an emergency landing in Pittsburgh. Something's wrong, and the airline won't give me information. Can you use your contacts to find out what's happening?" He paused, listening. "Yes, that's right. Isabelle Morgan. She's 7 months pregnant." "Thank you." Mark Davis, a former college roommate who now worked for the Department of Transportation, was just one of many influential contacts Nathaniel had cultivated over the years, not through networking events or power lunches, but through genuine relationships built on mutual respect and occasional well-timed assistance. While waiting for Mark's callback, Nathaniel checked social media for any mentions of the flight. His search for Stellar Air 1372 initially yielded nothing. But then a trending hashtag caught his eye: "Justice for Isabelle." His blood ran cold as he clicked on the tag. The most recent post from a user named @LeoKramerLens contained a series of photos that made Nathaniel's hands shake with fury. The images showed in crystal clear detail a Stellar Air flight attendant with her hand extended, clearly having just slapped Isabelle, whose head was turned with the impact, a red mark already forming on her cheek. The caption read, "Happening now. Pregnant black woman slapped by @Stellar Air flight attendant after asking for water and medical help. Flight diverted to Pittsburgh, where victim, not aggressor, was detained. Justice for Isabelle, flying while black." The post, just 17 minutes old, had already been shared thousands of times. Comments were flooding in, many from people claiming to know someone on the flight who confirmed the photographer's account. Nathaniel's phone rang, Mark returning his call. "Nathaniel, I've got some information. Your wife is being held in a security room at Pittsburgh International. The airline is alleging she interfered with the flight crew, but my contact at the airport says there's a lot of confusion about what actually happened. Apparently, a passenger has photos contradicting the flight attendant's story, and they're going viral." "I've seen them," Nathaniel said, his voice dangerously calm. "Is Isabelle all right?" "She's pregnant, Mark. She needs medical attention if she's stressed. My contact says a female officer just called for paramedics to check on her. That's all I know right now. Thank you. I need one more favor. Tell your contact to make sure no one intimidates or pressures my wife until I get there. I'm on my way now." Ending the call, Nathaniel turned to Ryan. "Have my jet prepared for immediate departure to Pittsburgh. Call Diane and have her assemble our legal response team. I want them on the plane with us, and get me Preston Hayes on the phone." Preston Hayes was the CEO of Stellar Air, a man who had no idea that as of 20 minutes ago, he answered to Nathaniel Morgan. "What are you going to do?" Ryan asked, already making the necessary arrangements. Nathaniel's normally warm brown eyes had turned to flint. "I'm going to show them exactly what happens when you mess with my family." As Ryan stepped away to make the calls, Nathaniel's phone chimed with a notification. Leo Kramer had posted an update. Stellar Air VP of Customer Relations just arrived. Instead of addressing the assault by their employee, they're threatening the victim with federal charges. This woman is pregnant and asked for water. At Stellar Air is doubling down on their disgusting behavior. Justice for Isabelle. The post included a photo taken through a window in the terminal showing Isabelle being escorted by security personnel, her face a mixture of dignity and distress. Nathaniel's phone rang again. This time it was the call from Preston Hayes that Ryan had arranged. "Mr. Hayes, this is Nathaniel Morgan." "Mr. Morgan," Hayes replied, confusion evident in his voice. "I was told this is urgent, but I'm afraid I don't recall having any business with you. Our corporate development team handles potential partnerships, and my assistant would be happy to—" "I own your airline," Nathaniel interrupted. "As of 18 minutes ago, I am the majority shareholder of Stellar Air. But that's not why I'm calling." There was a moment of stunned silence before Hayes found his voice. I wasn't aware of any ownership change. Our board would have—" "Check your email. The confirmation from your board chair was sent while we've been talking. But again, that's not why I'm calling. Right now I'm calling about my wife, Isabelle Morgan, who was just assaulted by one of your flight attendants and is now being detained at Pittsburgh International Airport." Another silence, longer this time. When Hayes spoke again, his tone had changed completely. "Mr. Morgan, I had no idea. I'm just learning about an incident on one of our flights, but I wasn't aware of the details or that your wife was involved. I assure you we will get to the bottom of this immediately." "No, Mr. Hayes, I will get to the bottom of this. You've already demonstrated how your organization handles situations like this by blaming the victim and threatening her with federal charges. Your vice president of customer relations is currently intimidating my pregnant wife instead of addressing the assault committed by your employee." "There must be some misunderstanding," Hayes stammered. "Howard Crane is one of our most experienced executives. He wouldn't—" "There are photographs, Mr. Hayes, and witnesses. Your most experienced flight attendant slapped my wife across the face for requesting water while experiencing pregnancy contractions. It's already trending on social media, and by the time I land in Pittsburgh, it will be a full-blown PR catastrophe for your airline. My airline." Ryan approached, giving Nathaniel a thumbs up to indicate the jet was being prepared. "I'll be in Pittsburgh in 90 minutes, Nathaniel continued. "I expect my wife to receive immediate medical attention, an official apology, and the termination of every employee involved in this disgraceful incident, including you, if necessary. Mr. Morgan, please allow me to handle this personally. I'll fly to Pittsburgh immediately and ensure—" "You've had your chance to handle it. Now it's my turn. 90 minutes, Mr. Hayes. The clock is ticking." Nathaniel ended the call and turned to Ryan. "Let's go. And keep monitoring social media. I want to know everything that's happening in real time." As they headed for the elevator, Ryan's tablet chimed with more notifications. The story is exploding online. Major news outlets are picking it up. Stellar Air's stock is already dropping in after-hours trading. Nathaniel nodded grimly. He had built his fortune by understanding systems and how to transform them. Stellar Air's broken culture was about to experience the most rapid transformation in corporate history, starting with the people who had dared to harm Isabelle. In the small detention room at Pittsburgh International Airport, Isabelle shifted uncomfortably in the hard plastic chair. The contraction that had seized her moments earlier had subsided, but she knew another would follow. They weren't regular enough to indicate active labor, but the stress of the situation certainly wasn't helping her condition. Officer Rodriguez had positioned herself near Isabelle, a silent but reassuring presence amid the tension in the room. Howard Crane paced nervously, his earlier condescension replaced by growing anxiety as he repeatedly checked his phone. Penelope Vance remained by the door, her victim performance wavering as she too sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The distinctive ring on her finger caught the fluorescent light each time she fidgeted with her hands. "The paramedics should be here any minute," Rodriguez assured Isabelle. "How frequently are you experiencing contractions?" "About every 15 to 20 minutes, Isabelle replied. "They're irregular but stronger than the Braxton Hicks I've had before." Howard's phone buzzed again. This time his face drained of color as he read the message. "Excuse me for a moment," he muttered, stepping toward the door. "Sir, we're in the middle of processing this incident," Officer Jenkins objected. "This is an urgent airline matter," Howard insisted, already halfway out the door. "I'll be right back." As the door closed behind him, Isabelle straightened in her chair. Despite her physical discomfort and the humiliation she had endured, she was still Isabelle Morgan, senior partner at Sterling Knight and Associates, specializing in corporate litigation. It was time to take control of the situation. "Officer Jenkins," she began, her voice clear and authoritative. "I am formally asserting my right to medical attention, access to my personal belongings, and legal representation. I have been detained for over 40 minutes without being charged with any crime, denied my phone to contact my family, and prevented from receiving medical care despite being visibly pregnant and in distress." Jenkins blinked, clearly not expecting this sudden shift from compliant detainee to assertive attorney. "Ma'am, this is standard procedure for—" "There is no standard procedure that permits denying medical care to a pregnant woman," Isabelle interrupted. "And as I am a licensed attorney, I can assure you that detaining me without charges while refusing my access to counsel is a clear violation of my rights." Penelope scoffed. "Now she's claiming to be a lawyer. What's next?" Isabelle turned her gaze to Penelope, unflinching. "I am Isabelle Morgan, senior partner at Sterling Knight and Associates in Chicago. You can verify this with a simple internet search. And yes, Ms. Vance, I am an attorney, one who specializes in cases exactly like this one, corporate liability for employee misconduct." Penelope's smug expression faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "That doesn't change what happened on that plane. You were disruptive and threatening." "A claim contradicted by photographic evidence and witness testimony," Isabelle countered. "What is that ring on your finger, Ms. Vance? The 20-year service award from Stellar Air, isn't it? Given only to exemplary employees who embody the company's values." Penelope's hand instinctively covered the ring. "How would you know about that?" "I make it my business to know about the companies I interact with," Isabelle replied evenly. "Just as I know that Stellar Air's employee handbook explicitly prohibits physical contact with passengers under any circumstances. Section 8.3, if I recall correctly." Officer Rodriguez looked impressed despite herself. "The paramedics are taking too long. I'm going to check on their status," she said, moving toward the door. Before leaving, she turned to Jenkins. "Make sure Mrs. Morgan gets her belongings now." As Rodriguez left, Howard Crane re-entered the room. His earlier confidence had completely evaporated. He looked at Isabelle with new eyes, fearful, calculating eyes. "Mrs. Morgan," he began, his voice unnaturally high. There seems to have been a significant misunderstanding. We at Stellar Air Airlines value all our passengers equally and take any allegations of mistreatment extremely seriously. That's not what you said 15 minutes ago when you threatened me with federal charges, Isabelle replied coolly. What changed, Mr. Crane? Howard tugged at his collar. New information has come to light that suggests we need to reevaluate the situation. Perhaps we could speak privately. No, Isabelle said firmly. Anything you have to say can be said in front of these officers and Ms. Vance, who remains an employee of Stellar Air despite physically assaulting me. Penelope stepped forward, her act of vulnerability completely abandoned. You're blowing this completely out of proportion. If there was any physical contact, it was minor and in response to your aggressive behavior. So you admit there was physical contact? Isabelle asked the lawyer in her seizing on the admission. That's not what I… Penelope stammered. Ms. Vance, Howard cut in sharply. I need to speak with you outside now. Penelope looked confused by Howard's sudden change in demeanor, but followed him to the door. As they exited, Isabelle heard Howard hissing, Do you have any idea what you've done, who she is? The door closed, leaving Isabelle with Officer Jenkins, who now seemed unsure of his role in the unfolding situation. I'd like my purse and phone, please. Isabelle requested again, more firmly this time. Jenkins hesitated only briefly before nodding. I'll get them for you. When he stepped out, Isabelle was finally alone. She took a deep breath and placed both hands on her belly. Your daddy's coming, she whispered to her unborn child. I can feel it. A particularly strong contraction seized her, then causing her to gasp. As she focused on her breathing, the door opened again, not Jenkins returning with her belongings, but Officer Rodriguez with 2 paramedics. Mrs. Morgan, these paramedics are going to check you over, Rodriguez explained, ushering them in. The medical assessment was quick but thorough. Blood pressure elevated but not dangerously so. The baby's heartbeat strong and regular. The contractions, while concerning, appeared to be stress-induced rather than preterm labor. You need to rest and hydrate, the female paramedic advised. Ideally, we'd like to transport you to a hospital for monitoring given your condition and the stress you've experienced. I'll wait for my husband, Isabelle decided. He should be here soon. As the paramedics were packing up their equipment, the door burst open again. Howard Crane returned now, accompanied by a different man. Older, silver-haired, exuding corporate authority. He introduced himself as Preston Hayes, CEO of Stellar Air Airlines. Mrs. Morgan, Hayes began, his voice practiced and smooth. On behalf of Stellar Air Airlines, I want to extend our deepest apologies for the unfortunate experience you've had today. We pride ourselves on exceptional service, and clearly we have failed you in that regard. Isabelle regarded him coolly. Mr. Hayes' unfortunate experience is what you call it when the in-flight entertainment doesn't work. I was denied water while pregnant, physically assaulted by your senior flight attendant, then detained and threatened with federal charges by your VP of Customer Relations. That's not an unfortunate experience. It's assault, false imprisonment, and discrimination. Hayes winced at each accusation. You're absolutely right, and those are serious allegations that we intend to address immediately. If you'd be willing to accept our transportation to the finest hotel in Pittsburgh, we can ensure you receive proper rest while we arrange priority travel to Chicago tomorrow. Of course, Stellar Air would cover all expenses, including any medical care you might require. Where is Ms. Vance? Isabelle asked, ignoring his offer. Hayes shifted uncomfortably. She's been removed from duty pending a full investigation. And Mr. Crane also being dealt with appropriately. Isabelle nodded slowly. I see. And what changed in the last 30 minutes, Mr. Hayes? When I arrived, I was a criminal. Now I'm being offered the royal treatment. What happened? Hayes's carefully constructed facade cracked slightly. Mrs. Morgan, in the interest of transparency, we've become aware that this incident has attracted significant attention on social media. The photos taken by another passenger have unfortunately created a narrative that— A narrative, Isabelle interrupted. You mean an accurate documentation of what actually occurred? Of course, Hayes backpedaled. What I meant to say is that Stellar Air takes all customer feedback seriously and— The door opened once more, and Officer Jenkins finally returned with Isabelle's purse and phone. Your belongings, Mrs. Morgan. You're free to go whenever you'd like. No charges? Isabelle asked pointedly. Jenkins looked embarrassed. No, ma'am, no charges. Isabelle immediately checked her phone, finding 27 missed calls and numerous text messages from Nathaniel. Before she could call him back, another contraction gripped her stronger than the previous ones. She breathed through it, aware of the concerned looks from the paramedics. I think we should transport you to the hospital now, the male paramedic suggested. These contractions are increasing in intensity. Isabelle nodded, her earlier resolve weakening as her body reminded her of its priorities. All right, but I need to call my husband first. As she dialed Nathaniel's number, she couldn't help noticing the distinctive Stellar Air service ring on Penelope's finger earlier, a symbol of the airline's values that had been so thoroughly contradicted by the woman's actions. It made her wonder how many other passengers had suffered similar treatment without having the resources or platform to fight back. The phone connected, and Nathaniel's voice came through, tense with worry. Isabelle, are you all right? I've been trying to reach you for an hour. I'm okay, she assured him, though her voice betrayed her exhaustion. But I'm going to the hospital to get checked out. The baby's fine, but I'm having contractions. I'm 20 minutes from landing, Nathaniel replied. I'll meet you at the hospital, whichever one they're taking you to. How did you know what happened? Isabelle asked. It's all over social media. He paused. There's something I need to tell you when I see you. Just know that everything's going to be okay. More than okay. As Isabelle ended the call, she looked up to find Hayes staring at her with a new expression, one of dawning horror, as he pieced together the implications of her husband's imminent arrival. Your husband, he began cautiously. Would that be Nathaniel Morgan? Isabelle smiled for the first time since the ordeal began. Yes, Mr. Hayes, Nathaniel Morgan. I believe you two might have spoken recently. The color drained from Hayes's face as the full impact of the situation finally hit him. He wasn't just dealing with a wronged passenger or a PR crisis. He was dealing with the wife of the man who now owned the entire airline. The University of Pittsburgh Medical Center was only 15 minutes from the airport, but for Isabelle, the ambulance ride felt much longer. Each jolt of the vehicle sent waves of discomfort through her body as the paramedics monitored her vital signs and maintained a steady flow of conversation to keep her distracted. What happened on that flight wasn't just about one rude flight attendant, was it? Have you ever witnessed someone in authority abuse their power? Thinking there would be no consequences, type 1 in the comments if you believe Penelope should lose her job for what she did. Hit the like button if you're relieved Isabelle is finally getting medical attention. What do you think will happen when Nathaniel arrives? Let's find out together. Meanwhile, at Pittsburgh International Airport, the situation was rapidly evolving from an isolated incident into a full-blown crisis for Stellar Air Airlines. Leo Kramer had positioned himself in the terminal food court, where he had access to power outlets and Wi-Fi, and was providing real-time updates to his growing online audience. His latest post showed the paramedics transporting Isabelle through the terminal. Pregnant woman finally receiving medical care after being detained for over an hour. Sources say she's experiencing contractions after being slapped and stressed by Stellar Air staff. Justice for Isabelle. flying while black. The hashtag had exploded with celebrities, civil rights organizations, and thousands of ordinary citizens sharing Leo's photos and demanding accountability. Stellar Air's social media team was overwhelmed, their generic responses only fueling public outrage. In the first-class lounge, Walter Jennings nursed his third scotch, unable to shake the image of Isabelle's face after Penelope slapped her. He had remained silent when the officers questioned the passengers, telling himself it wasn't his problem that getting involved would only complicate his own travel plans and possibly jeopardize his platinum status with the airline. But now, watching the story unfold on the lounge television, CNN was already running breaking news segments featuring Leo's photos. Walter felt the weight of his cowardice. He had directly witnessed the entire incident from 3 feet away. He had seen Penelope ignore Isabelle's requests for water. He had heard the slap and seen the red handprint it left. And he had said nothing. His phone buzzed with a text from his daughter. "Dad, isn't this the flight you're on? Did you see this happen? Why isn't anyone helping her?" Walter stared at the message, shame washing over him. His 24-year-old daughter, who had attended every Black Lives Matter protest in their hometown, who had raised him to be a better man than he'd been today. What would he tell her? That he'd stayed silent to protect his airline status. In the executive offices of the airport, Preston Hayes paced nervously, while Howard Crane sat with his head in his hands. Their phones had not stopped ringing. Board members, major shareholders, media outlets, all demanding explanations. "How bad is it?" Howard asked, though he already knew the answer. "Our stock is down 17% in after-hours trading," Hayes replied grimly. "The board chairman called me directly. They're deeply concerned about the leadership team's handling of the situation." "We followed protocol," Howard insisted weakly. "The flight attendant reported a disruptive passenger. The flight attendant slapped a pregnant woman on camera." Hayes exploded. "And not just any pregnant woman, the wife of Nathaniel Morgan, who as of today owns 73% of this airline." "How was I supposed to know who she was?" Howard protested. "She didn't say anything about her husband owning the airline." "Because they were evaluating our operations incognito, you idiot, and we just showed them exactly how broken this airline is." Their argument was interrupted by Hayes' assistant. "Sir, there's a woman here to see you, a lawyer named Aisha Monroe. She says she represents Mrs. Morgan and Mr. Kramer." Hayes groaned. "Now they have a civil rights attorney. Perfect." In the terminal, Leo was surprised when a confident black woman in an impeccable suit approached his table. "Mr. Kramer, I'm Aisha Monroe, civil rights attorney. I understand you have documentation of what happened to Isabelle Morgan today." Leo nodded. "I have dozens of photos from the moment the flight attendant ignored her requests through the slap and the aftermath. I've already posted some online." "I saw," Aisha replied. "Very effective, but I'd like to see all of them. I've been retained to represent both you and Mrs. Morgan in this matter." Leo raised an eyebrow. "I didn't call a lawyer." "No," Aisha smiled. "Nathaniel Morgan did. For both of you. He's landing in about 10 minutes, and things are about to get very interesting for Stellar Air Airlines." As they reviewed the photos together, Officer Maria Rodriguez approached their table. "Mr. Kramer, we need to speak with you about the photographs you took on the aircraft. They're material evidence in an ongoing investigation." Aisha stood, extending her hand. "Aisha Monroe, counsel for Mr. Kramer. Any questions from my client will need to go through me, and I'd be happy to provide copies of the photographs for your investigation, provided they're being used to investigate the assault against Mrs. Morgan, not to build a case against her." Rodriguez nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here. We've had a development. Another passenger has come forward with testimony that corroborates Mr. Kramer's account and the photographs." Leo and Aisha exchanged surprised glances. "Who?" Leo asked. "Walter Jennings," Rodriguez replied. He was seated directly across from Mrs. Morgan in first class. He witnessed the entire incident and has provided a sworn statement confirming that the flight attendant was the aggressor and Mrs. Morgan was denied water and medical assistance. In a small conference room near the executive offices, Walter Jennings finished signing his statement, his hand trembling slightly. "I should have spoken up sooner," he admitted to Officer Rodriguez. "I was worried about— It doesn't matter what I was worried about. It was wrong to stay silent." "Your statement will help ensure justice is served," Rodriguez assured him. "It takes courage to come forward, even belatedly." Walter shook his head. "No courage would have been standing up on that plane when it happened. This is just conscience catching up too late." As Rodriguez was about to respond, her radio crackled with an urgent message. A private jet had just landed, and its occupants were demanding immediate access to the executive offices. Nathaniel Morgan had arrived. The sleek private jet taxied to a remote stand at Pittsburgh International, where a convoy of black SUVs waited on the tarmac. Nathaniel descended the stairs before they were fully secured, Ryan and a team of 4 attorneys following close behind. "Where's my wife?" were his first words to the airport official who greeted him. "Mrs. Morgan has been transported to UPMC for medical evaluation," the official replied. "She's stable, but doctors wanted to monitor her due to the contractions." "I'll go to her shortly," Nathaniel decided. "First, I need to address the leadership of my airline. Where are Hayes and Crane?" "Executive offices, sir. I've been instructed to escort you there immediately." As their motorcade cut through the airport service roads, bypassing normal traffic and security checkpoints, Nathaniel reviewed the latest updates from Ryan. "The stock is in freefall," Ryan reported. "Down 19% now. The board is in emergency session, and the flight attendant Penelope Vance is being held in an office adjacent to Hayes and Crane. They've separated her, probably trying to contain the damage. And the photos, the witnesses— The photographer Leo Kramer is working with Aisha Monroe now. They're compiling evidence, and a passenger named Walter Jennings has come forward with testimony confirming Kramer's account." Nathaniel nodded, his expression unchanged, but his eyes burning with controlled fury. "Good. The truth is emerging just as it always does." When they arrived at the executive offices, no introductions were necessary. Preston Hayes stood as Nathaniel entered, his face ashen. "Mr. Morgan," he began, "I cannot express how deeply—" "Save it," Nathaniel cut him off. "I'm not here for apologies. I'm here for accountability. Where is Penelope Vance?" Hayes gestured to a door across the hall. "She's waiting there, Mr. Morgan. Before you speak with her, I want to assure you that her actions do not reflect the values of Stellar Air Airlines." "That's where you're wrong," Nathaniel replied coldly. "Her actions exactly reflect the values of Stellar Air Airlines, the real values, not the ones in your mission statement. She's been with this airline for 20 years wearing your service award ring. She didn't become who she is overnight." Howard Crane tried to interject. "Mr. Morgan, as VP of Customer Relations, I can assure you that we have strict policies against— You threatened my pregnant wife with federal charges after she was assaulted by your employee." Nathaniel stated each word precise and cutting. "You're fired, Mr. Crane. Clear out your office by the end of the day." Howard's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. "You can't just— I own 73% of this company," Nathaniel reminded him. "I can, and I just did." Turning to Hayes, he continued. "As for you, Mr. Hayes, your future with this airline depends entirely on what happens in the next 24 hours. Now I'm going to speak with Ms. Vance, and then I'm going to see my wife. When I return tomorrow, I expect a complete plan for transforming the culture of this airline, starting with how you hire, train, and evaluate your flight attendants." Without waiting for a response, Nathaniel crossed the hall and opened the door to where Penelope waited, unaware that her 20-year career was about to end in disgrace. Penelope Vance sat alone in the small office, her perfectly manicured nails tapping nervously against the polished conference table. Her earlier confidence had evaporated as the gravity of the situation became increasingly apparent. Through the grapevine of flight attendants and ground staff, she had heard fragments of disturbing news, the photos going viral. A major shareholder involved her own name trending on social media. When the door opened, she expected Preston Hayes, or perhaps Howard Crane. Instead, a tall black man in an impeccably tailored suit entered, followed by another man carrying a tablet. Penelope didn't recognize either of them, but something in the first man's demeanor, a quiet, contained power, made her straighten in her seat. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice measured and controlled. "My name is Nathaniel Morgan." The name meant nothing to Penelope initially, but the way he said it with the certainty that it should carry weight made her uneasy. "I don't believe we've met," she replied, attempting to maintain her professional demeanor. "No, we haven't," Nathaniel agreed, taking a seat across from her. "But you met my wife today, Isabelle Morgan, the pregnant woman you slapped across the face when she asked for water." Penelope's blood ran cold as the pieces clicked into place. "Your wife, I didn't know. There was a situation that required—" "Stop," Nathaniel interrupted, raising his hand slightly. "I have seen the photographs. I have read witness statements. I have spoken with your superiors. There is no version of events you can present that will justify what you did." Penelope swallowed hard, her mind racing through possible defenses. "Mr. Morgan, in my 20 years of service with Stellar Air, I have always prioritized passenger safety. If there was a misunderstanding today, I sincerely apologize. But you have to understand the pressures we face when—" "This wasn't a misunderstanding," Nathaniel stated flatly. "This was a pattern of behavior. My wife was ignored when she requested water. She was dismissed when she explained her medical needs. And when she finally stood up because she was experiencing contractions, you physically assaulted her." "That's not— I didn't," Penelope stammered. But Nathaniel continued, his voice never rising yet somehow filling the room. "What's interesting, Ms. Vance, is that until this moment you didn't know who my wife was. You didn't know who I was. You didn't know that as of today I own this airline." Penelope's face drained of color. "You own Stellar Air?" "Yes," Nathaniel confirmed. "The acquisition was finalized this morning. I had planned to spend the next few months quietly observing operations before making any major changes. My wife's flight today was part of that observation. Neither of us expected to discover just how deeply the problems run." Penelope's hand unconsciously moved to cover the service ring on her finger, the symbol of her long career that now felt like a brand of shame. "Mr. Morgan," she tried again, her voice trembling slightly. "I have given 20 years of my life to this airline. One incident shouldn't erase—" "One incident," Nathaniel repeated, nodding to Ryan, who placed his tablet in front of Penelope. "My team has been busy in the last hour. Here are 27 formal complaints filed against you in the past 5 years, all alleging discriminatory treatment. Complaints that were systematically buried by management because you were, in their words, too valuable on premium routes." He swiped to the next screen. "Here are social media posts from passengers dating back 3 years describing encounters with you that mirror my wife's experience today. Different passengers, same behavior." Another swipe. And here is an internal performance review where your supervisor noted your particular attention to our highest value customers, while diplomatically suggesting you could improve interactions with diverse passengers. Penelope stared at the evidence, unable to form a coherent response. The truth, Ms. Vance, is that today wasn't an isolated incident or a momentary lapse in judgment. It was simply the first time your behavior was caught on camera and the first time you targeted someone with the resources to fight back. Penelope's professional facade finally crumbled completely. What do you want from me? An apology. Fine. I apologize. I had no idea she was your wife. I had no idea you owned the airline. If I had known, and that, Nathaniel interrupted, his voice suddenly sharp, is exactly the problem. You're not sorry for what you did. You're sorry you did it to someone with power. If Isabelle had been any other pregnant black woman asking for water, you would feel completely justified in your actions. He stood straightening his suit jacket. Penelope Vance, your employment with this airline is terminated effective immediately. You will surrender your company identification service ring and any other Stellar Air property before leaving the premises. You will not receive severance pay, and the company will not contest your unemployment claim provided you sign a non-disclosure agreement regarding the terms of your termination. Penelope gasped. You can't do this. I have rights. The union will... The flight attendants union has already issued a statement condemning your actions and distancing themselves from what they describe as conduct that violates both our professional standards and basic human decency. They will not be representing you in this matter. As if to confirm his words, Ryan turned the tablet to show her the union statement already published online. This isn't fair, Penelope protested, tears of rage forming in her eyes. One mistake. 20 years of mistakes that finally caught up to you, Nathaniel corrected her. The only unfair thing is how long it took for there to be consequences. He moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing, Ms. Vance. My legal team will be in touch regarding the assault charges my wife intends to file. I suggest you retain counsel. As Nathaniel left the room, Penelope sat frozen, the full weight of her actions and their consequences finally sinking in. Her career was over. Her reputation was destroyed, and the power she had wielded so carelessly for years had evaporated in an instant. Outside in the hallway, Preston Hayes waited anxiously, Howard Crane noticeably absent. Mr. Morgan, Hayes began, I've taken the liberty of drafting an initial response to the situation, a public apology compensation for your wife, disciplinary action for those involved. Mr. Hayes. Nathaniel cut him off. I'm going to see my wife now. She's in a hospital because of your company's failures. Tomorrow morning at 8, I expect to see a comprehensive plan for transforming this airline's culture, starting from the top. If that plan impresses me, you might keep your job. If not, you'll join Ms. Vance and Mr. Crane in the unemployment line. Hayes nodded rapidly. Of course, Mr. Morgan. I'll have it ready. And again, please extend my deepest apologies to your wife for this inexcusable incident. Save your apologies for tomorrow, Nathaniel replied. Actions matter more than words. That's a lesson Stellar Air is about to learn very thoroughly. As Nathaniel and his team made their way to the waiting vehicles that would take them to the hospital, Ryan leaned in. The media is gathering outside. They've gotten wind that the new owner is on site. Do you want to make a statement? Nathaniel shook his head. Not yet. First I need to see Isabelle. Then we'll decide how to tell this story. Not just what happened today, but what's going to change tomorrow. In the hospital waiting room, Leo Kramer and Aisha Monroe were comparing notes when a nurse approached them. Are you the friends Mrs. Morgan mentioned? She asked. She's asking to see you. She's stable, and the doctor has confirmed it's not active labor, just stress-induced contractions that should subside with rest. Leo and Aisha followed the nurse to Isabelle's room, where they found her resting in a hospital bed, monitors tracking her vital signs and the baby's heartbeat. Despite the ordeal she had endured, Isabelle's face brightened when she saw them. "The crusading photojournalist and the legal cavalry," she greeted them. "Thank you both for everything you've done today." "I just documented what happened," Leo said modestly. "You lived through it. And your documentation is making sure no one can deny what happened," Isabelle replied. "That's more important than you know." Aisha approached the bed, taking Isabelle's hand. "How are you feeling?" "Really?" "Better now," Isabelle admitted. "The contractions are less frequent. The baby's vital signs are perfect, and knowing that Nathaniel is handling things at the airport gives me peace of mind." As if summoned by her words, the door opened, and Nathaniel Morgan entered the room. For a man who had just fired multiple executives and fundamentally altered the course of a major airline, he looked remarkably composed. But when his eyes found Isabelle, the corporate warrior vanished, replaced by a husband whose only concern was his wife's well-being. "Isabelle," he breathed, crossing the room in 3 strides to take her hand. "Are you all right? Is the baby?" "We're both fine," she assured him, her fingers interlacing with his. "Just some stress-induced contractions. The doctor says they should stop completely now that everything's being resolved." Nathaniel gently touched her cheek, where the faint outline of Penelope's handprint was still visible. "I'm so sorry this happened to you." "It's not your fault," Isabelle insisted. "It's my airline," he replied softly, "which means it's my responsibility to fix it." A knock at the door interrupted their reunion. Officer Rodriguez entered, followed by a hesitant Walter Jennings. "Mrs. Morgan," Rodriguez began, "I wanted to update you personally. We've completed our investigation and will be filing assault charges against Penelope Vance. Mr. Jennings here has provided a witness statement that corroborates everything in the photographs." Walter stepped forward, unable to meet Isabelle's eyes at first. "Mrs. Morgan, I want to apologize for not speaking up sooner. I saw everything that happened on the plane, and I remained silent when the officers questioned us. There's no excuse for my inaction, and I'm deeply sorry." Isabelle studied him for a moment. "You're the man who was sitting across from me, the one Penelope was serving champagne." Walter nodded, shame evident in his posture. "Yes. I've been a platinum member for years. Penelope always treated me like royalty, and I liked the special treatment. I didn't want to risk losing it. But watching what happened to you and then doing nothing about it, I couldn't live with myself." "You came forward eventually," Isabelle acknowledged. "That counts for something." "If there's anything I can do," Walter offered, "any way I can help make this right." Nathaniel, who had been quietly observing the exchange, spoke up. "Actually, Mr. Jennings, there might be. As a frequent flyer who's witnessed both sides of our service culture, your perspective could be valuable as we implement changes." Walter looked surprised, but nodded eagerly. "Of course. Whatever you need." As the room filled with discussion about next steps and legal strategies, Isabelle squeezed Nathaniel's hand to get his attention. "So," she said quietly, a small smile playing at her lips, "when were you going to tell me you bought an airline?" "Tonight, actually," he replied with a sheepish grin. "I was going to surprise you when you got back from Chicago. But it seems the airline had a surprise of its own planned." "Some surprise," Isabelle said, her free hand resting on her belly, where their son continued his strong, reassuring movements. "But maybe it happened this way for a reason. Now you know exactly what needs to change." Nathaniel nodded thoughtfully. "And we're going to change it. Together." The hospital room had transformed from a place of medical concern to an impromptu strategy session. Isabelle, still connected to monitoring equipment, but now sitting up with renewed energy, was at the center of an unlikely alliance. Nathaniel and his corporate team, Aisha Monroe, with her civil rights expertise, Leo Kramer, with his photographic evidence, Officer Rodriguez representing law enforcement, and Walter Jennings providing insider perspective as a long-time frequent flyer. "The doctor says I can be discharged tomorrow morning," Isabelle informed the group. "The contractions have stopped completely, and both the baby and I are doing well." "That's the best news I've heard all day," Nathaniel said, the relief evident in his voice. Isabelle turned to Leo. "I want to hear exactly what you witnessed on the flight from the beginning." Leo nodded, pulling out his camera to reference the timestamps on his photos. "I was in row 5, but I had a clear view of your seat and the flight attendant's interactions with you. The first thing I noticed was how differently she treated you compared to other passengers in first class, especially Mr. Jennings here." Walter shifted uncomfortably, but didn't interrupt. "She ignored your call button repeatedly," Leo continued. "I started documenting it after the third time because the pattern was so obvious. When you finally got up because you were in distress, her reaction was immediate and hostile. The slap?" He paused, shaking his head. "I've documented a lot of discrimination incidents for my series on everyday racism, but I've never seen something so blatant and physical, especially from a professional in a service role. And yet, when the authorities came on board, almost everyone stayed silent," Isabelle noted, looking toward Walter. "That's unfortunately common," Aisha interjected. "The bystander effect is amplified in situations where people fear personal consequences for speaking up. On an airplane where everyone just wants to reach their destination without delay, that fear is even stronger." Walter nodded solemnly. "I told myself it wasn't my problem, that getting involved would only complicate my travel plans, maybe risk my status with the airline. I'm ashamed of that calculation now, but in the moment it seemed rational somehow." "That calculation is exactly what allows discrimination to continue," Isabelle said, not unkindly. "The expectation that there won't be enough witnesses willing to stand up makes people like Penelope bold in their actions." Officer Rodriguez, who had been quietly observing, spoke up. "The airport authority has completed its investigation. We have more than enough evidence to charge Ms. Vance with assault. The question is whether you want to pursue those charges, Mrs. Morgan." And all eyes turned to Isabelle, who looked to Nathaniel before responding. "Yes, I do. Not out of vengeance, but because accountability matters. If Penelope had done this to someone without my resources or platform, there might never have been consequences." Nathaniel nodded in agreement. "And that brings us to the larger issue. What happened today wasn't just about one flight attendant. It was about a corporate culture that enabled her behavior for 20 years, promoted her, and gave her a service award, despite numerous complaints." "Exactly," Isabelle confirmed. "Penelope didn't develop her attitudes in a vacuum. She was rewarded for providing excellent service to certain passengers while treating others with contempt. The company valued that trade-off." "Not anymore," Nathaniel stated firmly. "Not on my airline." "Your airline," Isabelle repeated with a small smile. "I still can't believe you bought Stellar Air without telling me." "I was going to surprise you with it tonight," Nathaniel explained. "The acquisition had been in the works for months, but we kept it quiet to avoid affecting the stock price and to give us a chance to evaluate the company's true operations before making changes." "Well, you certainly got an unfiltered look at those operations today," Aisha observed dryly. "More than I ever wanted," Nathaniel admitted. "But maybe it's better this way. Now there can be no doubt about how urgent the need for change is." Leo, who had been reviewing his photos, looked up. "These images have reached over 7 million people in just a few hours. The public reaction is overwhelming. People are sharing their own stories of discrimination on Stellar Air and other airlines. This isn't just about what happened to Isabelle anymore. It's becoming a movement." Nathaniel considered this information thoughtfully. "Then we need to respond accordingly. Not just with a standard corporate apology and promise to do better, but with concrete, verifiable actions that transform the company from the inside out." Isabelle's eyes lit up the corporate attorney in her recognizing a unique opportunity. What if we use this incident as a catalyst for creating the most inclusive, equitable airline in the industry? Not just changing Stellar Air's policies, but rebuilding it from the ground up with values of respect and dignity for all passengers and employees. A complete transformation, Nathaniel mused, warming to the idea. New name, new training, new leadership, new culture. I could help with that, Walter offered unexpectedly. My company specializes in corporate culture consulting. We've never worked with an airline before, but the principles of inclusive leadership are universal. And I'd be willing to contribute to the training program, Aisha added. My firm has developed anti-bias curricula for several major corporations. As the discussion continued evolving from addressing the immediate crisis to envisioning a completely reimagined airline, Isabelle felt a sense of purpose replacing the trauma of the day's events. What had begun as a humiliating and painful experience was transforming into an opportunity for meaningful change that could benefit millions of travelers. A nurse entered to check Isabelle's vital signs, smiling at the animated conversation she was interrupting. Everything looks perfect, Mrs. Morgan, but remember the doctor wants you to rest. Too much excitement isn't good for the baby. I'll make sure she rests, Nathaniel promised, giving Isabelle's hand a gentle squeeze. As the others prepared to leave, promising to reconvene the next morning, Leo lingered behind for a moment. Mrs. Morgan, I hope you don't mind, but people online are asking for updates about your condition. They're genuinely concerned. Isabelle considered this. You can tell them I am stable and the baby is doing fine, and that we're grateful for their support. After everyone had gone, leaving just Nathaniel and Isabelle alone in the hospital room, she finally allowed herself to process the full emotional weight of the day. I kept thinking about how many other women like me have experienced what I did today, but without anyone to advocate for them, she said quietly. Without photographic evidence, or influential witnesses, or husbands who own airlines. Nathaniel nodded solemnly. That's why this can't just be about making it right for you. It has to be about making it right for everyone. Do you remember what you said when you first considered buying Stellar Air? Isabelle asked. That I wanted to transform it from a company known for getting people from point A to point B into one known for how it treats people along the way, Nathaniel recalled. Well, Isabelle said with a small smile, I think we just found our mission statement. 6 months later, a sleek jet bearing the distinctive blue and gold livery of Orion Airways, formerly known as Stellar Air Airlines, touched down at Chicago O'Hare International Airport. The rebranding had been just one visible aspect of the airline's complete transformation under its new ownership. In the front cabin, Isabelle Morgan gently rocked 3-month-old Nathaniel Jr. as the plane completed its landing roll. The healthy baby boy, born 2 weeks early, but at a robust 7 pounds, had his father's thoughtful eyes and his mother's determined chin. First flight successful? Isabelle whispered to her son, who responded with a happy gurgle. And Mommy didn't even have to ask twice for water. Indeed, the flight attendant assigned to their cabin, a young woman named Tiana Brooks, had been attentive and professional throughout the journey, treating every passenger with the same level of respect and care. This wasn't by chance. It was the result of a comprehensive overhaul that had transformed every aspect of the airline in the 6 months since that fateful flight. The day after the incident, Nathaniel had made good on his promise to revolutionize the company. Preston Hayes had presented a hastily assembled plan for addressing the immediate PR crisis, but it had fallen far short of the fundamental changes Nathaniel envisioned. Hayes was removed as CEO that same morning, replaced temporarily by Nathaniel himself, until a more suitable leader could be found. That leader turned out to be Serena Marshall, a respected aviation industry veteran, known for her commitment to equity and innovation. as the first black woman to lead a major U.S. airline. Her appointment had made headlines, but it was her actions in the months that followed that truly distinguished her leadership. Under Serena's guidance, and with Isabelle's direct involvement, Orion Airways implemented the most comprehensive anti-bias training program in the industry. Every employee, from baggage handlers to pilots, underwent the mandatory training developed by a team led by Aisha Monroe. Unlike the superficial diversity seminars common at many corporations, this program addressed systemic issues, unconscious bias, and practical scenarios drawn from real passenger experiences. The infamous photos taken by Leo Kramer now hung prominently in the company's headquarters and training centers, not to shame, but to remind. "This is our origin story," Serena often told new employees. "Not one we're proud of, but one we learn from every day." Penelope Vance's very public firing had sent a clear message throughout the company that discriminatory behavior would no longer be tolerated. She had attempted to sue for wrongful termination, claiming she was being made a scapegoat for systemic issues, but the overwhelming evidence against her had resulted in the case being dismissed. The assault charges had been resolved with a plea agreement requiring community service and sensitivity training. Howard Crane had quietly disappeared from the aviation industry altogether. His approach to customer relations, now recognized as emblematic of the old culture Orion was determined to leave behind. Perhaps most significantly, Isabelle had established the Orion Equity Foundation, funded by the airline's profits and dedicated to addressing discrimination in the travel industry as a whole. The foundation provided legal support to travelers who experienced mistreatment-funded research on creating more inclusive travel environments and offered scholarships to underrepresented groups pursuing careers in aviation. Walter Jennings had become an unlikely but committed ally in these efforts. True to his word, his consulting firm had helped develop new service standards that ensured all passengers received equitable treatment. More surprisingly, he had become a vocal advocate for corporate accountability, sharing his own journey from silent bystander to active participant in creating change. As for Leo Kramer, his photographs of the incident had earned him a Pulitzer nomination and transformed his everyday discrimination project into a national conversation. He now served on the Orion Equity Foundation's board of directors, continuing to document both injustice and progress. The transformation hadn't been without challenges. Some longtime employees had resisted the changes, clinging to old ways of doing business. Some investors had worried about the costs of the extensive retraining and culture change initiatives. But the results spoke for themselves. Employee satisfaction was up, customer complaints were down, and surprisingly to many industry analysts, profitability had increased. As Isabelle carried Nathaniel Jr. through the terminal, several travelers recognized her from the news stories and social media. Some nodded respectfully, others smiled at the baby, but one elderly black woman approached directly. "Mrs. Morgan," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I just want to thank you. I've been flying for over 40 years, and I've experienced what you did more times than I can count, but never had the power to do anything about it. What you and your husband have done with this airline, it matters to people like me." Isabelle, touched by the woman's words, shifted Nathaniel Jr. to one arm so she could grasp the woman's hand. "Thank you for saying that. It's because of people like you that we knew this work was so important." Near the baggage claim, Nathaniel waited with Ryan, both men smiling at the sight of mother and child approaching. "How was the inaugural flight?" Nathaniel asked, taking the baby from Isabelle and placing a gentle kiss on his son's forehead. "Perfect," Isabelle replied. "Everything we hoped it would be." Ryan checked his tablet. "The customer satisfaction scores are already coming in. 97% positive ratings. That's unprecedented for a first flight on a rebranded airline. It's not just a rebranded airline, Nathaniel corrected him. It's a reimagined one. Later that evening, in the comfort of their Chicago penthouse, Isabelle and Nathaniel watched as their son slept peacefully in his crib, the nursery painted in soothing shades of blue and gold, the new Orion Airways colors reflecting the journey that had brought them to this moment. 6 months ago, I was so afraid, Isabelle admitted quietly. Not just for myself, but for our baby. I kept thinking, is this the world he's going to grow up in, where his mother can be humiliated and assaulted just for asking for water while pregnant? And now, Nathaniel asked, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Isabelle smiled, leaning into his embrace. Now I think about how one terrible moment led to real change, not just symbolic gestures or empty promises, but fundamental transformation. That's the story I want to tell our son someday. On the wall opposite the crib hung a framed photograph, not one of the infamous images from the plane, but a more recent one. It showed the entire crew of the first official Orion Airways flight, standing proudly in their new uniforms, a diverse group united by a shared commitment to treating every passenger with dignity and respect. Beneath the photo was the company's new motto words that had emerged from Isabelle and Nathaniel's hospital room conversations 6 months earlier. It's not just about where we take you, it's about how we treat you along the way. What would you do if you witnessed discrimination like what happened to Isabelle? Would you speak up immediately like Leo? Stay silent like Walter initially did? Or something in between? Leave a comment with your thoughts. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more powerful stories about people fighting injustice. Share this video if you believe more companies need to be held accountable for how they treat all customers. Thank you for watching. And remember, one person with courage can spark transformation that affects thousands. This story reminds us that discrimination doesn't exist in isolation. It thrives in environments where it's tolerated and even rewarded. Penelope wasn't created in a vacuum. She was the product of a system that valued certain passengers over others and ignored complaints from those deemed less important. Real change requires more than removing one bad actor. It demands examining and transforming the entire culture that enabled them. The power of documentation cannot be overstated. Leo's photos provided irrefutable evidence that prevented Penelope and the airline from controlling the narrative. In an age where incidents can be captured and shared instantly, accountability is more possible than ever before. Most importantly, this story teaches us about the responsibility of bystanders. Walter's initial silence allowed injustice to continue, while his eventual testimony helped bring about justice. Every witness faces this choice: remain comfortable or stand for what's right. True transformation begins when enough people choose courage over comfort, using whatever privilege or power they have to protect those being mistreated. Remember, systemic change often starts with a single incident that exposes deeper problems. The question isn't whether discrimination will occur, but how we respond when it does. Has something in this story resonated with your own experiences? Perhaps you've witnessed discrimination or been treated unfairly while traveling. Share your story in the comments below. Your voice matters in this important conversation. If you believe more people need to hear stories like Isabelle's, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more powerful narratives about overcoming injustice. Have you ever stood up against discrimination like Leo did, or regretted staying silent like Walter initially? What would you have done in their shoes? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Together we can create a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect regardless of who they are or what they look like. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the most powerful act of courage is simply refusing to accept injustice when you see it.